From claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth the hunt.
EWTN Radio presents The Miracle Hunter with Michael O'Neill.
Welcome to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. Coming up, we have a big event in Rome, of course, with Easter Sunday upon us. Will be followed then in the following week by the canonization of the young saint, Blessed Carlo Acutis. He'll be a saint, and I'm sure there'll be many people there, including myself, to revel in this new moment in the church where we have the first millennial saint. And we're so excited to devote the show today to Carlo Acutis, and some people may know I consider him my favorite new saint, or I guess you could say my patron saint, whether it's praying to him for my technology that doesn't work, or the building of my miraclehunter.com website, or anything else that focuses on miracles, my Eucharistic Miracles miniseries, for example. All these things I pray to Carlo for his intercession, because I have his focus on Eucharistic miracles and Marian apparitions and miracles and otherwise to evangelize. So I feel a connection to Carlo in that way. And on this week's show, we're going to be talking about Carlo Acutis in two interviews. Mary Beth Bracy from Sophia Institute Press is going to be joining us to talk about a new book, Carlo Acutis, God's Influencer, and that was written by the parents of Carlo Acutis. So talk about an insider view into the life of a saint. That will be amazing for people to check that one out. And also Tim Moriarty, the director of the film Carlo Acutis, Roadmap to Reality, that is out in theaters starting on April 27th. People can go to carloacutisfilm.com for more information. But talking to the director of that beautiful new film will be a lot of fun. We'll talk about how he portrayed the life of Carlo Acutis. Check out my series, Explore the Miracle Hunter, on May 6th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, my episode on Pruy. I traveled to the monastery of Pruy in France, where St. Dominic was said to be miraculously gifted with the rosary in an apparition of the Virgin Mary. And that's Explore the Miracle Hunter Pruy on May 6th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on EWTN television. Check out my series, They Might Be Saints, where each week we look at the lives of Americans on the path to sainthood. For this week, we have Francis Xavier Seelos, the life of Francis Xavier Seelos, who was a renowned confessor, spiritual director, and leader of missions throughout the United States in the early 19th century. And we look at the promising new miracle that's being attributed to him. Check that one out on Tuesday, April 22nd. And join me for my Jubilee Year pilgrimage to Milan, Turin, Florence, and Rome, which culminates in the canonization of Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. I'll be going from July 28th through August 4th, and we'll be going, as we always do, to places of saints and miracles. We'll see the Marian apparition sites of Italy, visit the Duomo in Milan, visit Turin to see the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, where the Shroud of Turin is held. We'll walk in the footsteps of Pier Giorgio Frassati and see the place where St. John Bosco had his famous visions. And we'll go to Florence, home to many great artists, of course. We'll see the David and see the site of the apparition of Mary to the seven holy founders of the Servites. And we'll finish up in Rome to see the many beautiful sites around the Vatican and end up at the canonization of one of the great modern saints. That's Pier Giorgio Frassati. You can find out more and sign up at pilgrimages.com/miraclehunter. Later in the show, we're going to be looking at the Might Be Saint of the Day. For today, we have Blessed Ramon Lechcandel from 1875, is the year he died, in Spain. In the 365 Days with Mary project, the Virgin of Verdun from Minas in Uruguay in the year 1901. The question of the week, how many parents have attended the canonizations of one of their children? And the miracle of the day on April 19th, 1759, there was a miracle that was experienced by someone named John Fielder. Let's take a look at the miracle news. We do this every week where we talk about the miracles happening around the world and those things that relate to miracles. And there's a new film that's out about the true story of a Lebanese miracle. And you might guess that this, of course, refers to Saint Charbel. And there's a remarkable new Lebanese film, A Sign of Faith, is drawing audiences into a deeply personal and profoundly spiritual journey. And it's a 90-minute biographical drama that recounts the true story of Nohad al-Chami, a woman who suffered a debilitating stroke in the 1990s and who later experienced what she and many others believe to be a complete miraculous healing through the intercession of Saint Charbel. And it's showing in cinemas across Lebanon and will be across the United States. But at the center of the story is Saint Charbel Makhlouf, one of the most beloved saints of the Maronite Catholic Church. And born in 1828, Charbel lived much of his life as a hermit in the mountains of Lebanon, and he dedicated himself to prayer, fasting, and silent communion with God. And following his death in 1898, countless testimonies of healing miracles, maybe more than any other saint that I've ever heard of, were attributed to his intercession both in Lebanon and around the world. And he was canonized in 1977 by Paul VI. And it's absolutely amazing, the story of Nawhad al-Chami, A Sign of Faith. And this is a new film that's out. So check this one out where you can. Let's take a look at Catholic Pub Trivia. We do this every week where we ask a trivia question and give out a prize to an emailer that writes in the fastest with the correct answer. And last week we talked about Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich. And we asked the question, given that she's still a blessed, who is the last German saint to be canonized? And the most recently canonized German saint is Maria Katharina Casper, who was canonized by Pope Francis in 2018 at St. Peter's Square in Vatican City, of course. And she was born on May 26 in 1820 in Dambach in Germany, and Casper founded the congregation known as the Poor Handmaids of Jesus Christ, and she was renowned for her dedication to serving the poor and sick, despite facing personal hardships and societal changes, and delayed her entry into religious life, and her canonization was supported by the recognition of a miracle attributed to her intercession, which occurred in India in 2012. So the answer to that question was Maria Katharina Casper as the most recently canonized German saint. The question for this week, another saint question, and we're talking about Carlo Acutis today, so this one is spot on. Aside from the Fatima children, who is the youngest non-martyr saint? And again, that question is, aside from the Fatima children, who is the youngest non-martyr saint? If you think you know that answer, want to win the prize, the image of the faces of Mary. Send me an email to questions@miraclehunter.com, and the fastest answer with the correct fastest writer in with the right answer will be receiving that prize, the image of the faces of Mary. And answers and winners will be posted on the show page on miraclehunter.com. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking with Mary Beth Bracy from Sophia Institute Press about a brand new book written by the parents of Carlo Acutis, Carlo Acutis, God's Influencer. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. People who tune into this show know that my favorite saint, or my patron saint at least, is Carlo Acutis, the first millennial saint, the blessed who's going on to sainthood in short order. And I'll be there in Rome with, I'm sure, many, many other people celebrating this momentous occasion where we see the young Carlo Acutis recognized as a saint in our church. And we're so excited because throughout the years, we've seen the mother of Carlo Acutis, Antonia Salzano, writing books and doing interviews and promoting the cause for her son. And there's a great new book that's out where she's the co-author with her husband, and it's called Carlo Acutis, God's Influencer. We're so excited about this book, and it's out from Sophia Institute Press. And we're here today joined by the spokesperson for this book for Sophia, and that is Mary Beth Bracy. Welcome to the program today, Mary Beth.
Thank you.
What do you think it is about Carlo Acutis that inspires so much fascination amongst the faithful?
Well, I think that the fact that he was so young when he passed away at the age of 15, but also the fact that he was very ordinary but also extraordinary. So we've heard him called Apostle of the Eucharist or the patron saint of the Internet. I was so floored in this particular book because it gave me a whole new appreciation for the depth of his spirituality, and I kept thinking he's a Thomas Aquinas in blue jeans. So I think just we have this amazing attraction to him because he's, on one hand, so approachable, but on the other hand, he reminds us of what we're called to aspire to.
Wonderful. And for a lot of the Catholic media and otherwise, a lot of attention is pointed at Carlo because of his youth, his interest in video games and computer programming, perhaps his websites that relate to Eucharistic miracles and Marian apparitions. All these things are highlighted in a big way, but is that enough to be declared a saint? What is it about Carlo that when we talk about a life of heroic virtue, what exactly are we talking about here?
There's so many different facets. I think that from an early age, he had a real yearning and a real hunger for the Eucharist. So when his nanny would bring him to Mass, even before he made his first Holy Communion, he longed to receive the Eucharist. And he didn't just have these desires, but he put them into action. So as soon as he made his first Holy Communion, he had his parents bring him to daily Mass, and he wanted to spend time with Jesus in holy hours before the Blessed Sacrament, before and during and after Mass. And he said that when we come before the Eucharist, we become saints. So he really made it his plan, and he would adopt a lot of other spiritual practices, from spiritual direction and frequent confession to living a life of virtue. He really tried to imitate the life of St. Francis in serving the poor and to bring the love of Jesus to everyone that he met.
Absolutely. We're talking today with Mary Beth Bracy about this book, Carlo Acutis, God's Influencer, from Sophia Institute Press. And I think one of the things that's fascinating about this book is it's written by his parents. And when we look at his parents and we read the book and we see them in interviews, they weren't necessarily practicing Catholics, were they, Mary Beth?
Oh, definitely not. So I think, in a sense, one of Carlo's quote-unquote miracles is that by his example and by his urging, he brought his parents back to the church, and he made them really fervent apostles for the Lord. His mother became a catechist, and as we see, they're so well-versed, and he really helped prepare them to understand the meaning of life and to accept his passing at an early age.
Absolutely. And we've seen a number of books from various Catholic publishers, being that Carlo Acutis is this saint that's different than other saints, the young saint, the one that is attracting millennials and otherwise, and is pointed to as the hope for the church. What is it about this book, however? We've seen other books from Antonio Solzano, for example, talking about her son. But what is it about this book that might be different for those people looking to investigate this one?
I think the two most important things for me is that it contains powerful stories from his parents and from others who knew him about things that I had never learned about Carlo before. His gift of friendship, his gift of fortitude and joy and service, and all of the things he did that are hidden largely to the world. In addition, I was so impressed that it contained actual passages from his writings. So there are incredibly beautiful passages that sound very mystical sometimes, but also very practical on the Gospels and the Holy Eucharist and the mysteries of our faith. So it's really something I would like to go back and read again and again and bring with me to adoration, for instance.
Absolutely. We're talking today with Mary Beth Bracy, who's presenting this book, Carlo Acutis, God's Influencer, written for Sophia Institute Press by the parents of Carlo Acutis. Absolutely amazing to have parents who have a son who's a saint. It's like a story like no other, for sure. But for people who pick up this book, what is the hope of Sophia Institute Press and perhaps his parents for writing this book? What is this hope for this book, God's Influencer?
Well, one thing I learned about Carlo is that he was also a catechist, and he gave his students a kit for holiness. So in this book, it contains the 7 ways that can help you become a saint that he compiled for his students. And I think it's so compelling and so effective because he said that this life is a trampoline for eternity. So I believe he really gives us the tools in order to reach that goal.
Wonderful. And for people who want to pick up this book digitally or in the store, what's the best place for people to find this new book from Sophia Institute Press, God's Influencer?
They can go to sophiainstitute.com or wherever great Catholic books are sold.
Wonderful. Well, we're so grateful to you, Mary Beth Bracy from Sophia Institute Press, for joining us to talk about this brand new book written by the parents of this up-and-coming saint, St. Carlo Acutis. Thank you so much for joining us on today's program.
Thank you.
God bless. That was Mary Beth Bracy talking to us about this new book from Sophia Institute Press, God's Influencer, about the incredible life of the up-and-coming saint, Carlo Acutis. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be looking at the question of the week. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. Hey, I love getting your questions. People write in from around the world with questions about miracles happening in today's world and those that have happened centuries ago. And I love getting your email questions. I have one of the most interesting email inboxes in the world, I think. And I also love answering questions in person when I give talks. And I travel around the country to different parishes or shrines or conferences. And of course, I talk about miracles. And I talk about Marian apparitions or Eucharistic miracles or whatever the topic needs to be, or how the church investigates the supernatural. But I always leave it open to questions at the end. And I love answering those questions. For people who would like to invite me to their parish to speak, you can go to miraclehunter.com and click on the Contact tab and send me a message that way. And maybe I'll be speaking at a parish nearby you sometime soon. But for the question from this week is a good one, and it's the question from a talk I recently gave. And the question was, how many parents have attended the canonization of one of their children? And you might imagine that the answer to this, there's a very short list of people who might qualify for this. And we think about, of course, children are always much younger than their parents by rule. And canonizations take sometimes decades or hundreds of years to happen. So could it ever happen that a parent attended the canonization of their children? Well, we look at the parents of St. Therese of Lisieux, for example, St. Louis and Zélie Martin, the parents of St. Therese. They were not present at her canonization in 1925 because they had both died decades before, in 1877 and 1894, but their daughter was canonized before they were beatified. In 2008 and 2015, they were canonized. So they were the first married couple to be canonized together. So while St. Therese's parents didn't live to see her canonized, she was canonized before her parents. So that's a little reverse way of looking at your question. But to answer your question, have there been parents who have attended the canonization of one of their children? The answer is, up until this point, 0. Carlo Acutis, of course, is the young Italian boy who died in 2006 and was beatified in 2020, is going to be canonized, and his parents, Antonio and Andrea Acutis, are still alive and actively involved in promoting his legacy. And when he is canonized, and they are there, they will be the first known case of parents attending the canonization of one of their children. So thanks for that question. And if you have a question for the Miracle Hunter, you can send me an email to questions@miraclehunter.com, and maybe I'll be answering your question on the air next week. Let's take a look at the 365 Days with Mary project. We do this every week where we look at the Marian devotion of the day as it lines up exactly to the day's date. We all know Fatima, May 13th, or Guadalupe, December 12th, or Lourdes, February 11th, but believe it or not, there's a different other Marian devotion for each and every day of the calendar year. And so for today's date, we have the Virgin of Verdun from Minas in Uruguay in the year 1901. And the story goes that the 10-inch statue of the Virgin of the Verdun, it's illuminated nightly, overlooks the town of Minas in the southeastern part of Uruguay. It was dedicated in April 19th, 1910, and the shrine attracts thousands of visitors annually, particularly on this date, April 19th, today's date, when the Catholic Diocese chose for the annual pilgrimage and celebration at the sanctuary because it was the date in 1825 on which the famous 33 patriots crossed the Rio de la Plata to liberate Uruguay from Brazil. And the statue is a traditional Immaculate Conception image, standing childless, head uncovered in a white robe and blue mantle, crescent moon at her feet. And that is the Virgin of Verdun from Minas in Uruguay in the year 1901. For more information on this fascinating devotion, or any of the hundreds of Marian devotions from around the world, you can go to the website mariancalendar.org, pick up the book, or download the free app, 365 Days with Mary. Let's take a look at the miracle of the day. We do this every week where we try to find a miracle that happened on the day's date sometime in Christian history. And for today's date, on April 19th in 1759, in Moriarty in Hungary, there was a man named John Fielder. And on the site where once stood a church of the Premonstracian 12th century, a new church was to be built in the 18th century. On the night of April 19th, 1759, the mason, John Fielder, had a dream. Mary predicted that the next day in the ruins of the collapsed church, exactly where the altar was, he would find something valuable. She also commanded the builder to put it on the newfound altar so everyone could see. The next day, the mason discovered the place, as indicated in a dream, a statue of ivory, 11 centimeters tall, for the Mother of God, a masterpiece of the 14th century. And the Cardinal Mergazzi, he confirmed this discovery of the miraculous statue, and after the discovery of the sacred statue, a new church was built, and pilgrims began to flock in large numbers, and Moriarty was one of the most important pilgrimage sites in all of Hungary, and still is. And so that is the miracle of the day from April 19th, 1759. And let's take a look at the sainthood news. We always try to keep you up to date on those people moving along the path to sainthood, whether we're talking about servants of God or venerables, those people who might be saints. If they get all their miracles, they're recognized by Rome. And so the big sainthood news from this past week was the movement of the famous architect of La Sagrada Familia, Antonio Gaudí. He has been declared venerable. He has been nicknamed God's architect. While his creative work was impressive, his spiritual life was even more so, and Pope Francis has approved the recognition of the heroic virtues of Spanish architect Antoni Gaudí, who lived from 1852 to 1926, and the Holy See Press Office confirmed on April 14th that the designer of La Sagrada Familia, the famous neoclassic basilica in Barcelona, consecrated by Benedict in 2010, is now venerable. And this, of course, is the first step toward the beatification and canonization of the man who's become known as God's architect. With one miracle, he will be declared blessed, Antoni, and with 2 miracles, he will be a saint. And so this is the big news coming out of Rome, the declaration of venerability for the creator of La Sagrada Familia, Antoni Gaudí. Let's take a look at the might-be saint of the day. We also try to do this where we look at people on the path to sainthood whose death anniversary or feast date lines up exactly to the day's date. Today's date is April 19th, so today's memorial is for Blessed Ramon Lach Candel. He was a priest. He was a member of the Sons of the Holy Family. He was a treasurer, teacher, director of several centers run by his sons. He was a writer and poet and one of the martyrs of the Civil War. And he was born in 1875 in Torelló in Barcelona in Spain, and he died in 1937 in Montcada in Barcelona. And his remains were never found, but he was declared venerable, and on May 10th, 2012, Pope Benedict XVI, in a decree of martyrdom, beatified him. And the beatification occurred on October 13th, 2013 by Pope Francis, and so we see him as Blessed Ramon Lach Candel, a martyr, and with one miracle, he will be declared Saint Ramon. For those people who want to watch They Might Be Saints, they can tune in to They Might Be Saints on EWTN television, and on Tuesday, April 22nd, there's an episode on Francis Xavier Silos, who's a blessed. In the life of Blessed Francis Xavier Silos, he was a renowned confessor, spiritual director, and leader of missions throughout the United States in the early 19th century. The promising new miracle that's being attributed to him is examined in this episode of They Might Be Saints. So check that one out on EWTN television. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking with Tim Moriarty from Castletown Media, the director of the brand new film Carlo Acutis, Roadmap to Reality. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. As I've mentioned before many times, my patron saint is Carlo Acutis, the new saint from Rome, with the canonization happening there in Rome on the 27th. And I'm so excited to be there in person. And this is a big moment for me personally. I've spoken with his mother on different interviews, and I've got a little icon of Carlo, and I definitely pray to him when my technology isn't working right. But also his focus on miracles is something that he and I share. So I always am inspired by the work that he did on his website in promoting Eucharistic miracles and Marian apparitions and otherwise. So I feel to be a kindred spirit with Carlo Acutis in some ways. So I'm beyond excited about his canonization coming up on April 27th. So excited to be there in person. Well, today we've got Tim Moriarty. He's the director of a brand new film that'll be hitting theaters on April 27th, the canonization day. The name of that film is Carlo Acutis, Roadmap to Reality. People can find out more at carloacutisfilm.com. Welcome to the program today, Tim Moriarty.
Thanks so much for having me, Michael. It's a real pleasure and honor to be speaking with you.
Well, this was a great film. I had the opportunity to take an early look at it, and it is so well done. And I think audiences everywhere are going to be excited to learn the backstory, the background of Carlo Acutis. And we see interviews with his mother and father and various people, authors and otherwise, people related to him who have a lot to say about the young saint. How did this project gain traction? How did it get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So my company's Castletown Media, and we previously worked on a couple different documentaries. Most recently, Mother Teresa, No Greater Love, which was a Knights of Columbus film. And then last year, with Jim Wahlberg, we produced Jesus Thirst, the Miracle of the Eucharist. And there was a gentleman down in Beaumont, Texas, who had really a great benefactor of the church down there, had built a youth camp for kids. And his bishop, Bishop Toops, wanted to name the chapel after Carlo Acutis, and he'd never heard of him. So he read a book and was just deeply moved. And Jim had been giving a talk there at a men's group, and the idea just came to this gentleman. Boy, we need a film about Carlo. And so he approached us with the idea. About a month later, Mrs. Acutis was actually traveling in the United States, and she made a visit down to Beaumont. So I was able to fly down there and meet with her and talk to her about what angle we would take on this. We sat down and said, a lot of folks have done some work on Carlo, what his life was all about, emphasizing just the fact that he was relatable. But what did she think was important to tell? And she said, Carlo was ordinary. He wore blue jeans and sneakers. But really, he was a mystic. I mean, he was a mystic who had a deep, deep prayer life. And she said, he was the first, he's been called the first digital saint, but he was also aware that this whole digital world has dangers too. And she told the story right then and there that, he loved computers and he loved video games, but he had read articles even as a young person about kids getting addicted to video games. So he actually monitored his use. He would only allow himself 1 hour a week playing with his PlayStation. So she said, I think that angle, the Carlo, needs to get out more. And so that kind of set us off on a journey to tell the story of Carlo, but really to put Carlo in relationship to our contemporary cultural moment, to the crisis facing young people with screen addiction, to the mental and spiritual crisis they're facing with really high depression rates and isolation, and really examine what is this virtual world that we're increasingly living in, and how in many ways is it antithetical to the sacramental world, to this extension of the incarnation where Christ meets us in the Eucharist most especially, which Carlo was deeply devoted to. So that's a little of the backstory and why we wanted to take this angle to our film, which was about Carlo, but it was also, what does Carlo mean for us today, especially young people who are facing just the tremendous challenges of this cultural confusion, this milieu of the virtual melding into the real, and the confusion about what is real.
Yeah, no, that was one of the things that caught me off guard when I watched the film. I thought, well, this is going to be a biography only of Carlo Acutis. I'm going to learn all these things, and I did learn so many things. And I must say the film is so well done. The production value is tremendous on this film, and the graphics, etc. are so well executed. But I was surprised to see the interplay in the storylines between the Carlo Acutis background and also this how the digital age is affecting the youth. And I thought that was so interesting, the interplay between those two ideas. And would you just to restate it, was that his mother's idea to focus on that aspect?
It was very much inspired by that conversation. Yeah, it was very much this sense of Carlo. There can be a naive way of looking at Carlo, and this is where she would say, "Well, he's on the internet. Isn't that great?" But it's more like, no, he was on the internet in a very specific way. He was on the internet. Christopher, who we interviewed, actually had a great line during the interview where he said he was online to get people offline. He was online to lead people back to real face-to-face encounters. He was online to get people back to the Eucharist. He used this incredible research he's done, Eucharistic miracles, to reawaken people to the reality of Christ's presence in the Eucharist. So it was very much inspired by the conversation with Mrs. Acutis. It was also inspired by something that G.K. Chesterton wrote about. The saint is an anecdote to the ills of the age, that every age gets the saint that it needs. So that question of what does Carlo mean? What do we need today? Especially young people, what do they need today? So that whole question of let's take a deep look at this. There was years ago, The Social Dilemma was a documentary that came out, and it was a kind of a sociological analysis of what is this, what's happening to people, social media. We wanted to sort of say, what is a theological look at this, and how do we rediscover really the sacramental worldview by seeing the ways in which the virtual world put humanity at threat. So there were really three elements to the film. One was the biography of Carlo, diving deep into that. One was this look at the rise of a technological worldview. And then we knew we needed to give flesh to it. We had these two elements, and they both felt rich. But we wanted to sort of show a real journey. We didn't want to just tell people stuff. We wanted to actually give them an experience. So there's a number of things in the film that were very providential. One was I reached out to Monsignor Shea's office at the University of Mary, and I got in touch with Jerome Richter, who is a vice president there, and trying to organize this interview with Monsignor. And he said, this might be the Holy Spirit, but I'll tell you what, in 3 days, we're going to take 150 high school kids to Italy on pilgrimage, and the culmination of that pilgrimage is to visit Carlo's tomb. But here's the kicker: we're asking them to leave their phones at home. And so I called my co-director and I said, boy, can you drop everything and get to North Dakota like tomorrow? And so that then became the through line of the film, where we wanted to see this journey of young people. And we see them at the beginning of the film. They're on their screens 7-8 hours a day. And many are very honest about the faith not feeling very real to them. Many were raised Catholic. They just say, I don't know if I really believe this. And we wanted to see them kind of walk this journey to the depths of reality, the real glories of reality, by visiting the great sites in Rome, visiting Eucharistic miracle sites, learning about Carlo, weaving Carlo's story into their journey. And by the end, kind of just seeing how Carlo is inspiring this generation to rediscover what in many ways the virtual world is making us numb to, which is reality in its fullness, embodied reality. And sort of show how Carlo, as the first millennial saint, is a sign of great hope. So that's a little bit of the backstory. It did feel very providential, where we knew that we had something interesting to say, but in a documentary and in a film, you want to give people an experience. You don't want to just tell them what to think. You want to do more showing than telling, and that's why the third element, this tracking this pilgrimage, was so important, and felt very just grateful that sort of God gave that to us, really. Just when we were looking for something, and it was so clear that this is the story we needed to take.
We're talking today with Tim Moriarty from Castletown Media, director of the new film Carlo Acutis, Roadmap to Reality. It's in theaters starting on April 27th, which is coincidentally or otherwise the canonization date for Carlo Acutis, and people can go to carloacutisfilm.com for more information. And Tim, when you went into this and you gathered those high school students and filmed them at the beginning. And some of their comments were, eye-opening. Their lack of belief, their lack of interest, perhaps, their focus on the digital world, you might say. Did you were you surprised to see the effect that visiting the tomb of Carlo and visiting these amazing places in Italy had on them?
I would say yes and no. I mean, on the one hand, having been on my own journey, having walked away from the faith, and then coming back, knowing the reality of the depths of reality that are always on offer to us, it wasn't surprising that if you can take people on a journey and get them away from their distractions, that something will happen, that God works, that God will work. And what was surprising, though, was, I don't know if it was, what was really, to me, telling was the honesty at the early part of our documentary, where a lot of these kids come from great families, and they were just honest. When you live your life on your screen that amount of time every day, there's a kind of something becomes desensitized. And I think for me it was just a tremendous sign of hope, because there can be a lot of negative news, demographic, statistical news, people leaving the church, but then it's like when young people or people in general are able to really go on pilgrimage and experience the true richness of the faith, God really takes over. And so I think we didn't know what we were going to get when we went on that pilgrimage. In a way, we knew we needed to capture it, but that was one of the really, I think, huge blessings of it, is we didn't know which students, whose journey to track. It was more a place of unknowing, but saying, okay, the Holy Spirit will sort of guide us in the filmmaking. And I have to give a lot of credit to my co-director, Christian Sertz, who really went on that journey with them and was able to discover the story really in real time with them. So I think for us, it was really a sign of hope. And in a way, it really does mirror Carlo's own life. He came from a family that was culturally Catholic, but not practicing. His mother, she says that she'd maybe been to church 3 times in her life. And
I know that line was shocking in the movie when I heard her say that. That was incredible.
I know, it's true. It's true. And so we're in a kind of post-Christian world now. And instead of feeling fearful or sad about it, this is a story of what God is doing in that situation, where he's stirring hearts, like Carlo, who at 4 years old was drawn to the church, drawn to the tabernacle. That to us was like, okay, let's take a look at this moment. There's so much negative news. There's so much darkness around us. There's so much out there, and we go into that in sort of the sections where we look at technology. There is something nefarious at play in this war of attention that's being inflicted on us. But in the midst of that, God is doing something remarkable, absolutely remarkable. And I think at the heart of it is, as Catholics, it's a rediscovery of his presence in the Eucharist. And Carlo knew that intuitively, and he was pointing to that in everything he did. He shows us a way towards renewal. So I would say there's many surprises, but at the same time, it was a real affirmation of faith that God is present to us and working with us today.
Absolutely. Well, we're so grateful to you for joining us on today's program and talking to us about this new film. People can find out more at carloacutisfilm.com. When can they watch this? How do they watch this film about Carlo Acutis?
Yeah, we're very excited. We're in over 1,000 theaters. So it's a pretty wide release, and the ticket sales have been so good. The theaters are actually surprised. They're actually adding a couple dates. So opening is April 27th is Canonization Day. It's a way for people to participate really in the celebration of his canonization. If you're not able to travel to Rome, we're able to share in that here in the United States. So on our website, people can just type in their zip code and find out the local theater. And so April 27, and we've got 5 days where it'll be in theaters. So encourage people to check there, and then we'll be updating, where it will be available after that. But there's something really, there's something about going to the theatrical, going to a theater with people. We're encouraging, groups, parishes, discussion groups, school groups, youth groups. There's a lot of, I think, beauty in going to this together. And the other thing we're doing, we partnered with the McGrath Institute for Church Life. They've created a really beautiful discussion guide that accompanies the film for people to kind of reflect on. And another partner of ours is the National Eucharistic Revival. They're also a sponsor who I think this really aligns with the work that they're doing and really renewing and reviving a deep faith in Jesus and the Eucharist. So yeah, I encourage people to check out the website. We really hope this is not just a film, but a kind of conversation starter in the church, a celebration of our first millennial saint, and kind of a deep reflection on what he means to us and for us, and what God is doing, what has done through this young man, and how do we take those lessons to heart.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Tim Moriarty from Castletown Media, director of the new film, Carlo Acutis, Roadmap to Reality, for joining us on today's program.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. God bless.
God bless. That was Tim Moriarty talking to us about this great new film about Carlo Acutis, my favorite new saint, my patron saint. You're going to love this one. Go to carloacutisfilm.com for more information. Check it out in theaters starting April 27th. And that's all the time we have for today's show. If you missed any of this episode or want to catch up on past episodes, you can go to EWTN.com/radio. Check out the audio archives or download the free EWTN app. I'd like to thank our guest today, Tim Moriarty, the director of the film Carlo Acutis, Roadmap to Reality, and also Mary Beth Bracy from Sophia Institute Press, talking to us about Carlo Acutis, God's Influencer, the new book written by the parents of Carlo Acutis. Check out my series, Explore with the Miracle Hunter, on May 6th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. My episode on Pruy, I go to the monastery of Pruy, where St. Dominic was said to be miraculously gifted with the rosary in an apparition of the Virgin Mary. So check that one out, May 6th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And this year is the Jubilee year. If you can check out my work on television, my Explore with the Miracle Hunter shows, or you can actually join me on a pilgrimage. I'll be going July 28th through August 4th to Rome, Milan, Florence, and Turin. We'll go to the Marian apparition sites of Italy, visit the Duomo in Milan, visit Turin to see the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist where the Shroud of Turin is held, walk in the footsteps of Pier Giorgio Frassati and see the place where St. John Bosco had his famous visions. And we'll go to Florence, home to many great artists. We'll see the David, of course, and the site of the Marian apparition to the 7 holy founders of the Servites. And we'll finish up in Rome to see the many beautiful sites around the Vatican and finish with the canonization of one of the great modern saints, that's Pier Giorgio Frassati. So go to pilgrimages.com/Miracle Hunter to find out more and to sign up. And I'd like to thank you for joining me today on Miracle Hunter, where from claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth the hunt. Talk to you next week.